I'm not totally sure if we're live at this moment, but this is our first time using StreamYard. We're testing this out. So if we're live, hopefully, welcome to Networking with Nathaniel. I have the pleasure of having a return guest today, Thomas O'Brien, who's become a friend of mine over the, I don't know, year almost now that we've known each other. We've looked at a couple deals together. We haven't quite done one yet, though. We haven't pulled the trigger on one, but he's doing a lot of big things in the real estate investing space. And since we last spoke on this podcast, he's transitioned. I mean, he hasn't transitioned, but he's added a new element to what he's doing. He's giving back to first responders. So Thomas was a pew pew cop in his former life, and has a very strong connection to first responders, and he's trying to help them learn how to invest and take charge of their financial well-being and their future. So I'd love to welcome back here, if I can figure out how to do so, Thomas. Thanks for being here, brother. I hope I
Hey,
did
man.
a little bit of justice there to what you're doing. We're going to jump into kind of the first responders network that you've started, and how you're helping people get invested. How you doing today?
Cool, man. I'm doing good. I was going to say I see the live red ticket counter, and it's moving up in value. So
I
I
think
think
we're
you're
good.
good, man. I think that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
Good
let's
stuff.
go. We have zero right now watching, but that's okay. They were, everybody that knows. Typically, I should have added this to the intro here. Typically, we're starting at noon Eastern time, but Thomas is playing Dad today, and Dad needs to leave around 12:30. So we wanted to make sure we brought as much value here as we could. So we pushed the start time up a little bit, so we could have a little bit longer of a chat. We're family first over here, and I know that family is a big value to you as well. And so if we can make adjustments where we can, we do it.
Yeah, man. Definitely family first. In fact, I
Yeah.
was thinking about it this morning, and I'm like, there's been times where I look back and maybe I was so busy with work or so consumed by growing the business and things like that I would, schedule business related things over family, which I think is a big mistake. But I understand a lot of people do it in the beginning, and I did too. I get it. But like on a day like today, like my wife picked up an extra shift, so I get right to spend the entire day with my kids because I was able to get into this neat little position with real estate. So got the kids' haircuts already. Here they come, and you're gonna storm the room.
Yeah.
And what else we got? Swim, and then we have golf after that, which is cool. I didn't grow up playing golf, so good for them. I love it. So
No,
yeah,
that.
man. All right, what are we getting into here, bro? I'm
Well,
following your lead.
yeah. I mean, your wife's. I don't know if you want to classify her as a first responder, but I
She
probably
is,
would.
yeah.
Yeah. Somebody working in that kind of field is definitely a first responder in my eyes. But you've made this pivot. You were doing a lot of creative deals and turning them into wraps. I know that the last time we spoke, and now you've added this first responder network. And I don't know a whole lot about it other than you're trying to help first responders learn how to invest and kind of take charge of their financial future. I'd love to just kind of dive into that a little bit and see, what that all entails. We have some links in the YouTube description for people to go check those out if they want to kind of connect with you. But what does it look like?
Cool, man. Yeah, I love talking about this stuff. I think for starters, I think the important thing to point out is I've been really consistent with taking imperfect action, and I know you're the same way, and I think that's a good rule to follow. So I think this thing is going to kind of continue to evolve, but it really just started out like with a very simple motive, in that I'm not a guru. I don't pretend to be, right? I mean, I have a couple years of real estate experience. I would say that I certainly have more than enough information to do some damage
Hmm.
out there in the creative finance world, and I've been able to put myself and my family in a much better position, financially, spiritually, time wise, all those important things that matter to me, with family and stuff like that. So it really was just something that I felt like I almost got like, it's not a free ticket, right? But it feels like a free ticket. Like I have this like life hack that I was fortunate enough to meet some really helpful people, and some of them, right? And I learned a lot of information that was able to put me in this position rather quickly.
Yeah.
So I'm like, why wouldn't I want to share that information, right? But I will tell you that the first responder world is a very interesting culture, right? Like, I think we're probably pretty blunt, pretty skeptical by nature. So, pushing some kind of a mentorship that costs money and things like that, it's kind of a weird fine line with, police, fire, military, nurses and stuff like that. But so I think it's been a bit of I've gone through a lot personally, like even over the past couple months, like trying to figure out what a good value is so that people can afford it, along with like it making it worth my time.
Mm.
So there's been a lot of things that are still happening and kind of still evolving along the way. But the group has grown, so we have about 30 something members now, and we started with like 4 or 5, which
Nice.
was really cool just over the past, like, really, like, I'd say probably about a month and a week or so. And again, it was like, me, like, I had to learn how to translate like what's in my brain to other people, which is way more difficult than I thought it was ever going to be, because I'm like, I understand it, and like my notes you'll see will look like chicken scratch, and I'll write on a whiteboard or a piece of paper, and like I get it, right? Because I've done it so many times. But then when I started doing that with these guys, they're like, it became pretty evident very early on that they're just not following it, and I'm like, all right, so we have to get a little bit more structured here. So I brought on an operations manager named Paige, and her husband is a first responder too. So he's a
Okay.
state trooper out in California, and it all kind of evolved from there. So she jumped in, we got a lot more organized, and I started building out like a whole SOP process, like an entire checklist with all these different Loom videos, basically walking. My goal is for anybody even new to creative or new to real estate in general to be able to jump in, get enough of an overview on what they're doing, and then jump right into action. So I feel like it's kind of starting to come together in a really cool way. Like we just had a guy, and like I'm always rooting for people. And the hard part is that like I only have so much time. And you know how it is, right? Like when you have like newer guys, or especially new to real estate, they'll bring a deal that what they think is a deal they're very excited about. And you're like, you look this up on Zillow and made a phone call, right? It's like, okay, so there's a lot more to do.
Yeah.
There's a much farther way to go here, but like I want to be like encouraging too, right? Like
Yeah.
that's a good action step to take, right? And like that, then what's next? So like finding that time balance with like being able to get people what they need and what they want, and also have it not like overwhelm my personal life too, is still something that we're kind of working on. But
Yeah.
I mean, we had a guy, a firefighter out in Virginia, just jump in. He was in for 3 weeks with zero creative experience, and like they were all asking me for the simplest form of lead gen that I could come up with. And like I got super pumped and put together this short like Loom video. It was like 30 minutes where I just called all these low equity leads. I set them my parameters, and I used a totally free interface on Zillow.
Wow.
And I said, look, guys, that was 30 minutes of my time. I spoke to 3 different agents. I built relationships with them that I'll continue to follow up on. And as you can see, we're targeting something very specific here. And it was super simple, dude. Like anybody could do that, right?
Yeah.
So David is his name. 3 weeks in, calls me up. He's got a deal. So I just jumped on the phone with him, help him nip it in the bud there, and we got it under contract.
Nice.
And like that was exciting. Like that's cool. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, and he's pumped, and he's already out looking for more deals and stuff like that. So I'm excited about it, dude. I think again, it's like it's going to continue to evolve. I don't know what it's going to look like at the end of the day, but it's been a bit of a cool experiment that's actually turning into something substantial, I think. So
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm glad to hear it because, like you said, you're taking a lot of action on this, and you don't you don't know what the maybe 3 or 4 steps ahead are, but like that's not stopping you from taking one step right now and kind of learning and figuring it out. I know it's a couple months back at this point, I think, when you were like, hey, take a look at this video and tell me what you think. It was like your welcome to my page kind of video. And
Yeah.
I forget what we talked about, but I had a couple like, yeah, I don't know about this little piece, and I and then you tweaked from there, and it's just like, you know, you don't know what you don't know. I know it's one of those like cliche things, but until you
Yeah.
start doing things, you don't realize that um, you don't know something. Like we just closed on a sub two in San Antonio last week in front of a group that we were at a mastermind on,
That's
and
awesome.
yeah, we thought we were going to be able to get lending on this thing, but it turns out that nobody wants to lend on it until we get a buyer in place. And so we're like, okay, so we didn't know that at the time, but you don't find out until you take, you take the steps to do it. And so, I love that. That's something that we connected on originally. Is just like we're freaking action takers. Like I don't need to know all the steps. Some people want to know all the steps. Sometimes you can have steps 1 through 10 laid out in front of you, but you don't realize like 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 6.7, like all
Yep.
these little things. Yeah.
Dude, that's like the absolute perfect way to put it. I heard that brings to mind a quote I heard from Alex Hormozy the other day on some Instagram clip. And he said that his I think the number one trait in a successful entrepreneur was resourcefulness. And I'm like, man, if that's not true, I don't know what is, right? Like just like you mentioned. So that's one of the hurdles that I'm still trying to overcome. In that, like, I even make this disclaimer, like in these videos, like, so we have it in school, which is like a really cool platform. So there's a whole classroom section where I put in all these Loom videos, right? Everything from A to Z. I'm trying to cover best I can. I make all these disclaimers throughout even this SOP checklist process that basically will walk a newbie through an entire subject to deal on the A to B side. And then there's an entire other series on the B to C side when you're wrapping it, right? And using a trust and everything, every step that you could possibly imagine up to about 80%. And I make that disclaimer because I'm like, what you guys don't know is what you don't know, right? Like these creative deals, we all know this. They have the potential to offshoot into any one of a number of different directions based upon so many different factors, right? That come up, like whatever, like all of a sudden you do your title search and there's an additional open mortgage on the property, or there's a HELOC that you're unaware of, right? Like, so, it's really hard to like make this reference point video that is easy enough for people to look back on and see where they need to be or where their next step is, right? And still, because you don't want to waste a lot of time jumping down a million different rabbit holes, right?
Right. Yeah.
So it's like I make that disclaimer, like this is about as 80% accurate as ever going to be, and that's about as close as it's ever going to get.
Yeah.
Because you are going to need like it's some guidance at some point when you hit those little hurdles. You're like, what is this? It's like now you got to consult, man. And I really do. I believe that that's just the way the creative world is. Because I'm leaning off of people that have 30 years of experience, and there's still stuff that I run into where I have to reach out and consult. What's your other option? You can just give up and walk away.
Yeah. Say this isn't for me. Or,
Right. And like that's okay too. Like maybe it's not for everybody, but if you want to do this business, like you kind of have to be, you have to be okay with consistently pivoting all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Something
my daughter
really harped on
water ice. So.
Oh, very nice. Something we talked about a lot at the mastermind that I was just at was taking action before you're ready. And this kind of just goes hand in hand here, like I don't know all the steps. Maybe I'm not super comfortable, but the only way you're going to get comfortable and the way you're going to learn all the steps is by going through it. Right. I don't know if you're familiar with Brandon Turner, probably the Bigger Pockets.
I got a great story for you after you're done.
Yes, I am. Okay. Yeah. I mean, he talks about a little quote that he always says was just go wash the truck. Right. Because he had this truck he was going to sell, and he didn't know really how to, like, what the heck do I do to sell this truck? Well, I know what one thing I can do is go wash the truck. Somebody's going to want it to be clean. And so he went and took the first step is going to wash the truck. Okay, well, what's the next step maybe? Oh, I guess I could take pictures of it. People are going to want to probably see what the truck looks like. So, and then as you go along step by step, you can just figure out what the next step might be. So yeah, let's hear your story now.
That's such a great example, dude. Like
Yeah.
one of the first action steps I ever took was going to a Bigger Pockets conference. I think it was in October of 21
Okay.
in New Orleans. They had the BPCon thing. And I thought I knew what I was doing with real estate, and I really had no idea. Anyway, so Brandon Turner was up on stage, and he had this huge triangle, right, where it showed, what a business structure looks like from employees all the way up to the very top of the pyramid, right?
Okay.
And the label that he chose for the very top of the pyramid was architect. And I guess his reasoning behind that was that he's the one kind of running the whole show from a distance as a visionary or whatever his terminology was at that time. But I remember thinking how cool that was. And I got these business cards. This is as soon as I started my LLC. I had no real estate experience. I ordered those business cards and I put architect on there. And I showed it to my wife and she's like, "What is this? You're not an architect." I'm like, "You weren't at the conference. You chose not to go that day."
Yeah.
Like, to me, it was valuable. And the reason was because I had already made up my mind that I was going to be successful in whatever my definition of successful is, right? So I try to tell guys like that all the time, because I think one of the biggest problems that people face is when they first jump into something, they're maybe afraid to ask questions because they don't want to look stupid, or there's some fear there that they're going to lose something, right? It's like the opposite of having like an abundant mindset.
Yeah.
Right. And like, you need to get that first deal under your belt. It almost doesn't even matter if you make any money on it, just because like you get it done and you're like, damn, I did that. You know what I mean? Like, I can totally do a lot more now. Right.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of it has to do with that type of mindset. Anyway, that made sense to me, but
Yeah, people will probably see your business card. They'll go, "What the heck? I don't know.
yeah,
Why are you real
architect.
estate
Okay.
agent?" Yeah. I love that you said, you don't necessarily have to make money on your first deal. I know we all want to go make, these $20,000 assignment fees or $50,000 flip, profits, but sometimes just the lessons that you learn in going through the deal are the real value, right? And so it allows you to go make more in the future and like, not make the same mistakes that you just made, or like see things that you can do better, and maybe the next one you're going to be able to make a profit or make a better profit on because you didn't, you took 2 weeks too long because you didn't realize, oh, the carpet should go in after the paint, right? Or whatever, because then you get paint on the carpet. I was just
No. Like, I mean, I think it's really true. And it was hard for, excuse me, it was really hard for me to even look at it like that in the beginning, because coming from a W-2 mindset and then paying money to learn something, I always find it comical because people throw money at college all day for like a degree that isn't going to help them make any money. But when it comes to real estate, like, you're learning a trade. It's like learning bricklaying or whatever. Like, you can read as many books as you want, but until you actually get out there in the field and start, doing it and learning from somebody who has all that experience, then, I mean, that's really the best way to do it. So, but it is hard. It was hard for me in the beginning, and I get that it's hard for a lot of other people in the beginning, especially when it comes to like the JV type stuff, because we know how that world works, right? Like, I mean, you could go to one guy and he's like, "Cool, I'll help you do the deal. I'm going to give you like a $500 like finder's fee," right, or something like that. And maybe they'll walk you through a portion of it. Maybe they won't, right? So what did you get out of that at the end of the day?
Yeah.
Like, to me, the most valuable part is actually, like you said, like learning that process, right? So like, I think one of the things that I did too was making sure that, like, even when I split deals, I want to make it profitable for everybody, right, as best I can. So like, I've done my deals 60-40, and the guys that I know that do wraps, that JV with people, they'll take the entire note and then they'll offer that an other investor, newer investor, like a very small finder's fee. And again, maybe walk them through it, maybe not. But at the end of the day, like, what are they getting out of it, right?
Yeah.
But like when people are brand new, like the concept of splitting a deal 60-40, it sounds like you're being taken advantage of. And like it's a big hurdle to overcome too. And like it's only one of those things that makes sense like once you get into the business and you realize what you're really getting out of it.
Yeah.
And the most valuable thing is the learning part of it, because I don't care what deal it is, bro. Like you're not walking away from your job on one deal.
Right. Yeah.
It's just not happening. So what
Yeah.
you want to do is you want to learn so that you can continue to take down more deals, right?
Heck yeah. Yeah. And like you said, it's hard to wrap your mind around not getting a 50-50 split.
Mm-hmm.
But and I would say that even you're being generous with the 60-40. Like you said, a lot of people want to just take 100% of it. Like, hey, I'll pay you a finder's fee for bringing the deal to me. Like from the new person's perspective, you see like, oh, I'm giving up 60%. Well, but what you're gaining is somebody that's going to get you 40%, right? Because you could keep 100% of this thing and not be able to get it to the closing table. What the heck's the point?
What is the point?
Yeah. So I've heard it 100 times, probably more inside Sub 2. I'd rather have 50% of something or 40% of something than 100% of nothing. Right.
Yeah. So, and like my whole thing is I wanted people to experience every aspect of the deal. Like wraps are very easy to split. Let's face it.
Yeah.
Like, if you're coming with some kind of partnership with somebody on like a long-term rental, that's a really intensive relationship, right? For a long time. There's a lot of things you're going to have to work through together. I mean, my gosh, me and my wife have been married for 10 years. So you're going to be married to another investor for 30 plus years that you barely know across the country or something. So it's a big difference. Like wraps are cool. You can kind of get in. And if you set them up properly and put the right buyer in place, like it's about as passive as they come. So I wanted everybody to be able to experience that like monthly payment that they're getting and knowing that like they have X amount of equity built into that deal that grows over time.
Yeah.
Like that was exciting. Like when those paychecks start hitting every month and then you just start stacking them up one after the other.
Yeah.
Like it is a really good feeling. And like, let's face it, like that's what, maybe some guys, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe for some folks, it's just a hobby because they're bored, but I doubt it. I think most people are interested because they kind of, from my experience, it seems like they want to put themselves and their families in a better position financially because it allows them more freedom, right? To do that stuff. So
yeah, it's the stacking of the things over time that actually gets you to quit to be able to exit your W-2. Let's use that better. It's better verbiage. Like unless you do like, a huge freaking multifamily deal the first time and you're able to assign it for like, 6 figures plus and
right.
Then
maybe. I do know guys that have done deals like that, so I'm not gonna lie, it happens, but
it does happen. Yeah. so yeah, go go back to the first responder. What I don't know how to. I want to make sure that I get all this out of here for people that are listening and are interested. There are links in the description here that you can go to. What are kind of the first steps? What should I expect coming in and joining? I know you said you've got 35 people at this, but you're iterating as we go along. You just brought an operations manager on. I'm repeating some of this stuff. There's some people that just joined, Thomas. And so like if somebody comes to your website and they're interested in joining, what's the kind of process? What am I going to expect here?
So I think for starters, I think one of the questions I've been asked most often is, do you need to be a first responder and what qualifies as a first responder? So it's a bit of a gray area. So we have kind of opened it up to families and friends of first responders because we don't want to necessarily exclude anybody.
Okay.
But it really was built initially for first responders and their spouses. But it is pretty open. So what can they expect? So initially when they sign up, so we have, thank you, Rick at Open Dispo. I will tell you, I will give him a tag right now because he's awesome. So we signed up to use his CRM and he's been integrating everything into school to function at a pretty high level. So we're still kind of working out some kinks, but once you sign up, you'll get set an invite email through the CRM. You'll be logged into school. and we have Paige and I are both in there. In the getting started section, we have some videos that kind of break down how school functions. And from there, I think the one thing I do like about school, among many actually, is that it invokes participation, which I think is
Okay.
really important, right? So there's different stages and levels that a lot of these training videos are laid out along this path. So when you first get in, you'll be in level 1. You'll have access to all the getting started videos, some of the paperwork, some of the essentials. Obviously, there's the community in there, which is probably the most powerful thing, because you're among like-minded individuals, and some of these guys are already getting themselves into deals, which is really cool. So
Yeah.
it's nice to be able to relate to somebody who's also new, right? And maybe just a few steps ahead of you, I think is really important too. So, and then it invokes the participation. So the more questions that you ask, and we have that very clear in the community, like there's no dumb questions. Like a lot of the first responder thing is out the window here, guys. Like we're asking all the questions we want to know, we want to learn. So that's what everybody is kind of in here for. So that's what we do. So the more you participate, the more points that you get in school, and then you start unlocking different levels, right? And I kind of tried to set it up so that where people aren't necessarily unlocking the SOPs right away, because they're probably going to overwhelm themselves rather quickly. So there's some really simple lead gen videos in there and things like that, and breakdowns on creative finance and exactly what it is that we do and how we do it and things like that. So from that point, like we have a calendar section in there that has group Zooms laid out on a very strict schedule every week.
Okay.
And in addition, this is wild. So this is like way above and beyond what you'll ever get anywhere. Okay. Is we have a 30-year veteran that with the use of the trust. So we do a trust mastermind bi-weekly, and we go over all the super high level trust related structuring and things like that, which is super valuable for even very experienced investors too.
Yeah.
So we're trying to kind of cater to everybody here. And then in addition to that, we also have a Sandler trained teacher that teaches Sandler sales system
No
framework
way. Okay.
every other Friday or every Friday, depending on his schedule, because he runs his own business too. But this is the same guy that I learned from. And he is a killer. He will murder you psychologically. That's what he is at sales. So if you get in there, I mean, so let's face it, right? Like when you jump in, right, in any, I mean, I've been in a few mentorships. There's a lot of different routes to go. So we try to kind of pigeonhole everything the best we can. Like we want you to make money when you start doing deals, right? So that's the whole goal. So what are we going to need to get there, right? We're going to need to encompass as much as we can of those skill sets. We have sales, okay, we have deal structuring, okay, and then we have the community itself.
Mm-hmm.
So those are the things that you're going to need to work on to really be that all-encompassing investor. And the cool thing is like I know that. So we do have like a transaction coordinator and things like that in our business. We kind of have a one-stop shop. I think is
Yeah.
probably the most important way to put it. Like
Yeah.
literally everything that you need to do a creative deal successfully is right in this group.
Yeah.
And it's stupid cheap. Stupid cheap to the point of where I am going to be raising the price pretty soon here.
Okay.
And again, that just comes along with the whole like evolving and realizing the more people that are joining, like how much time I want to be able to commit, like dedicated time, right?
Yeah.
And I can't just spread it out like a shotgun because otherwise, it's just not going to work, right? So that's kind of where we're at right now. So if you're thinking about learning this stuff and you want to start getting deals under your belt really quickly, then I would join now, because if you're going to wait, you're going to just pay more money. And I don't want to hear anybody complain about that.
Well, it sounds like this is even more involved than I had realized. There's a lot. You're putting everything in place here for somebody to be
Yep.
able to do deals successfully. I didn't realize that you were incorporating the sales, the sales stuff. I didn't know that you were incorporating like transaction coordinating into this. So somebody can come in and, like you said, it's kind of a one-stop shop. This is a box that you can go, I got everything I need here. for the most part, at least. I'm sure there's stuff that you're going to find a few months from now that somebody's going to break, and
Yeah.
you're going to have to figure out how to do it. But I
And I
love
know,
that.
and I know what you experienced investors that are listening to this right now are thinking. You left something really important out, Tom. I did not, sir. So we actually have dedicated private money lenders that I have worked with on my deals that I've cleared with. So anybody that comes through the First Responder Investor Network, which we call FRIEND 2.0 now, we do have dedicated private money lenders. So we have everything from gator lending, right, to longer term lending in place. So what that means is if you're tight on money, or if you're not tight on money and you're smart, like me and Nathaniel, because we use private money. So that's how you do it. That's how you scale. So literally everything that you could possibly need.
Yeah, I love it. And there was something that you mentioned too, um, that I wanted to. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of goes in with what we were talking about with taking action before you're ready. Is like you have certain things locked behind, I don't know, an experience wall or a points wall. I think you mentioned like you get points and then you unlock the next steps. Like sometimes knowing step 10 prevents you from doing step 2
Yep.
because you're
Exactly.
concerned about what step 10 is going to do. And no,
Yep.
we got to take everything builds on each other, and we're going to get to step 10. Don't worry about it. If you listen to
Right.
Thomas and you follow what he's talking about, you're going to get deals done as long as you're putting action into place every day. And it doesn't even, I guess, doesn't have to be every day necessarily, but putting consistent action in on a weekly basis towards your goals. That's what gets you to where you're trying to go, right? Because everything compounds over time. So I love what you're doing here, man. I think that anybody. Oh, actually, you know what? I was gonna say, what constitutes a first responder? I know that you mentioned that it's kind of open, but it's the First Responders Network.
It is, right? And I
Yeah.
think it's still kind of hard. It's funny because if you Google like first responders, like on the web, you'll get all kinds of different responses too.
Yeah.
But you have obviously like police, fire, military, prison guards, nurses. We have doctors in our program.
Okay.
So that's the general overview. But then you have like border patrol, like right, you get all these little niches within the first responder world. So we keep it loose on purpose, right? I mean, and a lot of times you have folks who maybe had a little bit of first responder experience. Maybe they were in a voluntary like firefighter or EMT or things like that. So, but again, it's open to your family members and friends also. So we're trying to spread the wealth here, and like for instance, Paige, like her husband's a first responder. She's experiencing the same you know uh, issues with her husband's work as he is in a way, right? Like, I mean, they're in it together.
Yeah.
So we're trying to look at that from the same lens, right? So that's why we're not really excluding anybody.
Yeah. I love that. Like, what's the point of excluding them anyway? I
Right.
could understand excluding some people because it's the First Responders Network, but if you're related in the midst of a first responder, like, come on, we want to help you guys
Yep.
get here. When a military personnel leaves for duty overseas, like the the wife back home is doing involved in that as well, right? They're not necessarily the person in combat, but they're the person left behind with the stresses of not the unknown and things, like kids and house and all that's to take care of. So
Yeah, dude, we share our time. It is hectic, and especially when you have a family. Like, I mean, the different schedules, right? Everybody works different schedules. You got the holidays that come up out of nowhere, and all those things. So balancing just that with your kids, I mean, come on, that's more than enough.
yeah,
So, I'd rather see people work together. And we have awesome cop down Tennessee named Corey, and his wife just joined, and like that really gets me excited, bro. Like, just from like a personal level, like I know that not everybody's going to want to take that step, and maybe there's some skepticism there in regards to paying money to learn this stuff. But guys, if you only saw like what was on the other side of it, like look at me, like I'm sitting here with my flip-flops on during the day, and like my wife picked up a shift last minute, and I have the kids all day because I can. Like, I get to make up my own schedule. And I don't care what anybody says, like money is a thing, right? To me, time and freedom are way more valuable. So just getting, I want to see like at least 100 first responders at least be able to be in a position if they want to leave their job, they can.
Yeah.
You know, I would love to be able to see like a more relaxed look on their wives' faces because they don't have to worry about getting shot or burned to death. You know what I mean? Like that's powerful to me.
Yeah. Well, I got a couple people actually that I might send your way. Just that now that we're talking about it, they're popping into my head. That kind of, I don't want to say need what you're doing, but could use it for sure, and they're going to get a lot of value out of it. I know that we're speaking of family. Yeah, no, get out of here, buddy. Speaking of family, get out of here.
Beat it.
Beat it. I know. Speaking of family, we're coming up on time for you to jump off here and go take your kiddos to swim and stuff. Before we head out, I want to make sure that you plug the website. It's kind of a complicated name. It will be in the show notes here in the YouTube description. So, but give you a chance to make sure that you plug it here, and then I want to hear kind of what the next 6 months, 12 months has for you.
So I think the next 6 months, you know, and this is one thing that I've had to kind of come to terms with a bit because it is very time consuming, like just recording material and putting a lot of thought and effort into making sure that these videos are as instructional as they can be, on top of, you know, the community aspect and all those other things, and kind of fielding calls from guys in the group. Is my business has really slowed down, and I'm fine with that because I'm making this commitment to this group. So I think over the next 6 months, it would really be try to be the tailor this thing to be as top notch as possible, so that anybody can jump in at any level and be successful with it, right? And then I'm jumping right back into my business, bro. Never stopping because I still have deals coming in. But you know, my commitment, right? Like we only have so much time. So 12 months, I think, full blown back to marketing again and absolutely destroying real estate in multiple states. There you have it.
Yeah. What do you see yourself needing over the next 3 to 6 months to be able to get to the point where it's a little bit more streamlined and you're able to focus back on your own deals?
I think one of the biggest things that I'm trying to have as much humility as possible. So I'm trying to consult with a lot of the guys and girls that are joining the group, because it's really important for me to get their feedback, because it's easy for me to forget how I was in the beginning, and I want to make sure that I'm covering all those bases. So like, just for example, the other day I touched base with a couple of guys who had just joined and have not a lot of real estate experience at all. And they were confused about a lot of the terms. And like, I forget that not everybody knows what ARV is. I know it sounds silly, but like, you know, because we're so used to using terms like that, I'm like, okay, now I got to go back and do this, right? So like, I feel like it'll be a kind of a natural thing, like to see it progress and get to the point of where I'm like, okay, I feel like this is, you know, pretty as close to airtight as I can get it, right?
Yeah.
It's never be airtight.
That's funny you mentioned that about the term. Like, that's one thing that I think Sub 2 did really well in their first modules. When you join, there's like week 0, week 1, and it was a little redundant for me because I had already been in real estate for 5 years at that point. But it's like, this is what ARV is. This is what a HUD is, like, so all these little terms. So when you're talking to other people and you're networking, it's not just going over your head like, oh, I don't know, I don't know what I'm talking about, so now I'm uncomfortable going and talking to people, right? Let's give you the basics first. And that's what something that you mentioned here, like, that you're doing very well, is like, let's do level 1, and once you get through level 1, you're going to unlock level 2, and and so I love this, man. Plug the website real quick.
Okay, cool. So the website link, which we're changing domain names again. Progress, right? Not perfection. All right. So it's school, SKOOL.investinto.com. It's INVESTINTWO.com. So the cool thing about joining a mentorship without an appropriate domain name yet is that it's still super affordable.
Yeah. You don't have the overhead yet. Yeah. So when you do change, when if you do change it, make sure you let me know so I can update the show notes here,
100%.
and put an updated link in there. And anybody that I run into, I'd love to shoot your way so they could learn from you of all your experience that you've had. You've done. I know you said you've only been here for 2 years, but you've done a lot in those 2 years because you've taken action. And I wanted to kind of go. Actually, let me go back real quick because you've mentioned it a couple times that you've afforded yourself the ability to take your be dad today full time, and not completely full time, you're doing a little bit of work stuff, but um you know it's not like it just fell into your lap. You went out and you took a lot of action, and you
Yep.
learned a lot, and you made a lot of mistakes, and you've done a lot that has gotten you to this point. It doesn't just happen unless we're like Donald Trump or something like that, but where our parents are wicked rich. You get to this point because you weren't afraid, or you were courageous enough to continue to take action when you maybe were afraid and didn't know what the next steps were. So we like to do this on Networking with Nathaniel. We pat yourself on the back. And I look forward to a lot of raving reviews from the First Responders Investor Network, and a lot of people that are you're changing their lives. So I love this, Thomas. I appreciate you coming back on, and everybody here that was with us live, I appreciate you guys for joining.
Cool, man. Thanks again, brother.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch. All right. See you, buddy.